have you been doing this?
Well, I've worked in the neighborhood for 10 years, but we started Mika 8 years ago, and I've lived in the neighborhood for 7 years.
So you moved intentionally into the neighborhood because you knew this is where you were called to be.
Yeah.
And started building relationships.
So I worked for the teen center that I worked at was another organization, and that's how I got to know all the families and the kids. And so then we left there to start Mika, me and some friends. And so our intention from the first time that we started someone as Americorps was that we would hire them. You know, it was just like less risk, both like from an HR perspective and from a financial perspective, to bring them on as Americorps. Because if they didn't do the work and weren't great, then you know you had like they were actually never on our payroll. You know, and then if they were great, then you could say, hey, this person's been working for nothing. Like, you should fund them. Yeah. And so, it kind of gave us something to take to a donor or whatever. So, you know, we would talk about what the neighbors were doing, what the Neighborhood Action Committee was doing, and say, this person is responsible for, you know, leading that process and, like, equipping the neighbors. And so, we went after funding as, like, the whole neighborhood. This woman was already doing the work in her neighborhood, and she came to me and said, like, would you train me to do this? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And we had been watching her and seen her work, and we're like, if we were going to go to a new neighborhood, that's where we would have gone anyway. And so we just liked her and her husband. They're pastors, and their church is right in the neighborhood. And so we've just been, like, hanging out with them and, like, using their, like, they let us use their space for a lot of stuff. And just kind of, like, building that relationship. And so I got some funding, but it wasn't like enough to bring her on. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really want her on our staff because she's on the church staff and she's like doing, you know, like great work, and I don't need it to be like called Mika, you know.
Right.
And so I just said, hey, I got this funding, like what could you, so basically we said that would be, we would contract her to start a neighborhood action committee. Okay. And so that's like easy to fund to start a new one. Like everybody wants to do that. And so I actually got the Catholic diocese to fund them and their Pentecostal pastors. So basically that would be more kind of like the intermediary thing where I'm coaching her to what that looks like in our process. But then she does a lot of the same programmatic things that we do in-house here, but that's not part of Mika. So they like run an after-school program. They have a gym at their campus, like, you know, program stuff that's the churches. They do that, and we think it's rad, and we'll, like, you know, we're trying to help them find some volunteers and stuff, but so really, like, our part with them is the Neighborhood Action Committee and coaching her to do that.
So you are, in that role, you're more the intermediary, but with the staff that you have here, you guys are more the practitioner designing or helping the residents to take ownership of different things, but you're providing that backbone, the organizational piece to it.
So for her, we're providing, like, the funding and the coaching expertise. Yeah. It was the part that made me want to find her funding, because I said, well, I've been trying to find funding so we can contract you. And she's like, I don't care if you have funding, just tell me what you know. You don't need money to tell me what you know. And I'm like, okay, now here's somebody that I want to invest in. And we've talked about that because in our neighborhood action committees, you know, certain people have different passions about different things. And so the way that it's worked out for us is, so the last part of our community building process is linking. And the idea is that we bring people from all our separate neighborhoods together to take on issues in the city. And because you'll see, we'll drive around in a minute, our neighborhoods are small. Like, technically we're in one neighborhood, the west side, like one census tract. But we have our neighbors draw, when we first get together, their neighborhood, and so they, like, self-identify that. And then, so 4 of our 5 neighborhoods are on the west side. So basically we have a healthy marriage lead team. And so we have representatives from each neighborhood, like one couple from each neighborhood come and they meet together. And so they are putting on, like, healthy marriage events and, like, programs for everybody. And so that team, and we have a couple now that lead that. Walter still facilitates it, but it's been more and more where they're leading
volunteers
it.
That just were passionate about this particular issue.
And so then they meet like monthly, and the stuff we were seeing in the neighborhood, like really, like literally, I'm not exaggerating, people saying like, we were talking about getting divorced before we came to this meeting, you know what I mean? So then we got then we gathered them and said, well, what, now we're free for it to be whatever we want it to be. It doesn't, and we had already done like 2 rotations in the neighborhoods with the same study. So, with the same seminar, so they're like, we just want to have fun, like couples like need to go out, and like, we want to like, let's do like a date night kind of thing. So they posted 3 of these date nights this year. And so, and they've been really intentional, like they've invited 2 couples from each neighborhood, like that they've identified are really struggling and they want to invest in. And so that's kind of their next thing, is they want to put on this retreat. So I think that might kind of be the rhythm, where they do a few of these date nights and then like host the like kind of meteor seminar retreat thing. One of the things that we've talked about, and I think we have a lot of thrift stores in our community, so it would be better to work out a partnership, but like at Neighborhood Ministries in Phoenix, they have their own store, and it's like on their camp. They have like a huge kind of compound, like, and on their campus they have the store, and so it's, a simple, almost like old school Sunday school buck kind of, earn a buck kind of thing, and but you get points for your work in the community, and then you can cash it in at the store, and they keep food in their store, and so we thought about something like that, but it doesn't make sense because of the way our community is for us to like start our own store, and so I haven't really pursued any of those kinds of relationships. But just answering your question, we found that we have to, the people that work best with our neighbors are the people that have been with us for a while. Like, we have to like indoctrinate people basically. Like, they have to like know us and our culture and who Mika is, and we've spent a lot of time in the last year in particular, but really 3 years, but really more intentionally in the last year, of just saying like, we're a community of people. Some people live in the neighborhood, some people give money, some people are volunteers, like, but these are the things that we do together. We pray together, we eat together, we serve together, we study together, and like, we have this rhythm for how we do that together. And so like, you're welcome to be a part of our community, and and then in that, people begin to understand like, oh, it's not like, oh, you people tell you people what to do or whatever, like there's this mutuality. So then when I say, hey, would you want to walk with this neighbor, then it's more like, oh yeah, I know her, we were at the study session together, or like whatever. And so or people just have more of an understanding of like our values and our culture of how we work. And so that's been more helpful than, we've had students come in and they're doing a research project, or they're they want to help someone or whatever, which, I mean, people come in that way all the time. Like, most people step into our community because they come to volunteer. But like, the more we can orient them around like kind of our way of doing it, then the more successful, or like more we can avoid like our neighbors being offended, or like, so then once a quarter we do what we call Mika Learns Together, and so we'll take a topic that's of relevance to our work. So we, like, at first it kind of came out of like, our volunteers need to be reflecting on their work and like reflecting on their faith. But then we were like, well, that conversation is going to be more powerful if our neighbors are, there too. You talk about immigration a lot different if you're sitting next to an undocumented immigrant,
Exactly.
And so, and it was important for our neighbors to hear. What I appreciated too is that people still we only invite like our community, that it's not like invite your whole church or whatever. We have different, so like, we have site coordinators who are neighborhood leaders at our community centers, so we have a more intense ongoing training with them.
And those are
so
different
than
than your
if they came to the
staff
volunteer
here?
orientation. Yeah.
So you staff a site coordinator in the centers?
No, only neighbors. So our neighbors coordinate the centers.
Oh, okay. So the centers are coordinated pure volunteers.
Right.
Cool.
And then we have staff that oversee them and coach them, so we have site coordinators that's who we're like most intentionally training as leaders, because we're training them around like volunteer management and classroom
all
behavior.
volunteers.
What? Like, the whole point of this is if they want to have, because the center opening came out of the Neighborhood Action Committee, and so if they want to do it, then if no one, we can't keep jumping in here. So we've this is our 3rd year doing it, our 3rd school year, and it's starting to like roll more. But it's definitely a challenge. But we have like more high schoolers volunteering in the centers. We have newer site coordinators this year, and we've gotten better about really investing in them and like seeing where are the areas that they need coaching. And so now we have kind of like a separate training for them, but they all went through the volunteer orientation and stuff.